I would like to present to you our next speakers, Mohamed Ramzi Temani, Head of AI for Systems Biology at the Johnson Pharmaceutical Companies of Johnson & Johnson, Ognjen Milicevic, ML Tech Lead at HTech Group, Nevena Veljkovic, CSO at Haliant, and Nebojsa Sabovic, co-founder and CTO at Fuller Vision. Their talk is in the form of a panel, and the topic is Future Trends in AI, Enhanced Healthcare, Insights from Industry and Academic Thought Leaders. The stage is yours.
So hi, my name is Neb. I think we should start by introducing ourselves. And I think the best way to introduce ourselves is by saying, what do we think AI is? I passionately hate the word, so because for some people it's discovering new medicine, for some people it's, for me, it's like ray tracing and eye scanning and whatnot, and for some people it's business processes. So tell us about yourself, and then let's start from that direction, because no one needs time.
Really loved if we went the other way, but I'll handle it, I guess. So first of all, hi everybody. My name is Ognjen. I'm an ML lead in HTech Group. Also, an important source of my knowledge and sometimes frustration is I teach at the university. I teach statistics in the School of Medicine, University of Belgrade. So just to be clear, I teach statistics to doctors, future doctors. And for us, actually, AI is nothing. AI is not there yet. We have a very kind of a frosty relationship with it because it's been there for ages. Even when I was studying, you had some predictions, you had models. You do learn about regression, which is kind of basic AI model that's been there for ages, but we don't really do much with it. We don't trust them. And that's kind of a shame, because what it is for me, it's an awesome tool. And this tool can be used for two things, in my opinion. It can be used for solving problems that you have, and this is a more advanced case. But early on, it's analytics. You cannot do proper analytics without modern machine learning, simply because of the volume of the data. Our classical approach is small databases, doctors putting stuff in Excel data sheets. So to go back and emphasize that, it's a tool that we are not using enough at this point.
All right, hello everyone. So I have my own microphone, so I don't need that a lot. Yeah, so I'm Ramzi Temani. Again, I lead a group in France. Basically, it's a wide group, but I'm based in France, called AI for Systems Biology. I'm also the co-lead for ERG group in J&J, enterprise representation group called AMINA. So it's more about diversity in the workplace. And I'm also adjunct professor since September at Paris-Saclay University, so we're trying, but I do only 40 hours a year, so it's not that much, and I teach AI in bioinformatics. So I've been in AI for a long time. It's true, like recently we see more people are trying to speak about it, but I would say my definition of AI is really analytical insight. So how you could leverage large data and use these tools that exist, or that you could try adapt or develop, to bring information from the data. And I think the challenging part is really how to make sense out of this insight that you bring from these tools. And in order to do that, you need to have like a full ecosystem to address those points, and we'll elaborate later. Thank you.
Okay, it's my turn. My name is Nevena Veljkovic. I'm a Chief Scientific Officer at Haliant, which is a software company focused on healthcare. And I'm also a Principal Research Scientist at Vinci Institute of Nuclear Sciences in the Laboratory of Bioinformatics. And by training, I'm a chemical engineer. So I do not work in coding, and I'm present there in many machine learning researches and studies as a domain expert. And for me, AI is decision support. solutions. So far, we are still. I think we should still rely on natural intelligence, but we are developing various decision support systems based on data, and AI is there to help us.
All right, and I have the mic, so I don't have to introduce myself. So I think I want to structure this. I want to first talk about opportunities for AI, which is why I wanted you to introduce yourself and basically tell me how you see AI, which is how you see opportunities. And then we're going to talk about challenges. And I think, let's start with challenges first. You know, let's start with bad and then end it on a high note. Let's talk, we talked for an hour about education and how do we get a workforce that can actually use AI. And our fear was, like, if we let the government design it, it's going to be a Python course in how to, you know, and then this is decisively what we don't need from kids coming in. So let's now go in opposite direction and tell me, what would you do? How would you solve the problem of educated workforce? I mean, I'm sure you're hiring like me, and I'm sure like people that walk in the door don't have as much experience as you would want them to be, and so what would you do to change it?
Yeah, we just discussed that, but yeah, I will start from the basic science, and we will be very tough in insisting in learning mathematics, physics, writing, and thinking, and introducing computers as late as possible, to be in order to let kids be functional in the modern world, but develop skills that they can translate into really smart solutions for the future.
Well, you know, I took this position recently at Paris-Saclay University because I realized that I would say the preparedness of student is not to the level it used to be in my time, a few decades back. And ultimately, you know, like, we have more information today. So if you Google Python course, you'll find hundreds of free courses. Basically, in our time, when I started, is like you have to fight to borrow the book from the library to study from it. The internet was not that abundant. However, we have like strong foundation in math, physics, and reasoning. And what I'm pushing my student to look at is like, how would you distinguish yourself from the crowd? Knowing today, like, you know, you have like this opening worldwide, so if you want to apply in a position, you probably get 100+ people from all out the world. So how can you make yourself different from the crowd? And ultimately, it's not only the knowledge or the language that make you different from the rest, is basically your ability of thinking out of the box. And basically, small example I was giving to my student is like, they take the basic, I tell them, you know, like, this is not really rocket science, but then I ask them, can you formulate a solution out of the problem? How would you have that reasoning? So this is your question. And then I push them to the next level. Can you bring other insight out of my question? I'm asking you A, B, C. Can you take things out from that data that I haven't asked you to show that you could really take a problem and do something more out of it? And then I tell them, okay, can you present it to me? Make groups. And then try to, now that you are in groups, there's importance of learning from others, because nowadays everyone is stuck in his mobile phone, in their screen, so the interaction between the people is missing. So how would you leverage asking others about their experience? How can you work better in groups? And I think those kind of things are very important today, and we see it even in real life in our daily practice. Nowadays, there's complex problems that require multidisciplinary skills and soft skills and critical thinking. And those, unfortunately, are not part of the curriculum, and we need to think how we could integrate them in the normal pipeline.
If you will allow me, I will cram in 2 answers to this question, because I feel that this is a completely different question for academia than it is for the industry. From what I've seen, purely hands-on. The question of technical literacy is a very important thing for students, especially in the medical profession, obviously. And I remember I first started teaching in 2018. And I remember the first time I wanted to be creative. That's that energy that kind of wears off in time. And I decided to create a joint spreadsheet with them to show them, like, let's all edit this together. And there were 2 people out of 20-something that didn't have an email, like any existing emails in 2018. Somehow they did have a smartphone. I'm not sure what's going on there. How did they hack this problem? But so we were opening Gmails together. That was, I felt like this is such a huge win for me because I identified a small problem. Maybe it's irrelevant, but we like solved it, and they have email so far. Next year there was maybe 1 person, and then every next year when I was asking, like, do you have emails? They were like, who is this old person asking weird stuff? Of course we have email. So I felt like that everything is going forward in the sense of basic technical literacy. We just have to be patient. And the same thing was with my expectation of using Word, Excel, and stuff like that, because you remember when we were, well, some of you might remember, we used to put in our CVs like proper use of MS Office and stuff, and then we just stopped because it wasn't relevant anymore. And now I feel that even though they do have emails, they're not really using those tools properly anymore. Like, nobody knows Excel. And somebody offered a solution, it's not mine, but it makes sense that it might be smartphones. But you always have that, like, am I just experiencing this techno stress with age? Like, is this problematic for me? Like, why are they not using PCs anymore? Everybody's on their phone, you know? But it is a problem, and they don't know what to do when something becomes a date, which is very common in Excel. You can ruin your whole database, and so it's a problem that we're going backwards in that direction. I'm sure of it. I offered one view on what might be the solution, that's it. But for the industry part, we don't have that. So the technical literacy is there, at least basic. They will join your Zoom properly. They will use everything. But then with the new trend, specifically now, we're heavily interviewing people for modern machine learning, for LLMs. It's what we need right now for NLP. And then every person I've interviewed, and there were like 7 of them, they all jumped straight from being like a linguist or maybe something like a numerical maths person. They simply jumped straight to deep learning and to NLP. And so you're trying to probe all those things at the interview, like what's your Python like, what's list comprehension, do you know basic statistics, what's a p-value? And they're just, I mean, usually they're honest and they're not embarrassed by that. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't really care about that. And I feel that the other interviewers are not too concerned about that either. So I think that we skipped a lot. That's ties in with all this basic science stuff. We don't all have to be experts in all the area. We don't all have to be Renaissance people. But in a way, like, there has to be something between, you know, like nothing and then being a very specific domain expert.
All right. So to recap, you said if you want to have workforce that knows AI, we need to go back to basic and teaching fundamentals and not make him Da Vinci, but make him well-rounded. And then the second concern, and I think we might have some survivor bias here, but like we're saying that kids today are a little bit more, oh, I'm so happy to say, this makes me officially old. Kids today, you know, back in the day, the instruction for the TV used to explain how to open it and change some parts, and now it says don't eat the bloody batteries. Like, kids are getting dumber, you know, like, I'm so happy to say it. Okay.
We politely disagree. Kids are great. Yeah.
Yeah. No, just something that I want to have on video so I can show to my kids. Okay, so let's talk about these. Why is academia interesting to me? It's one of the slow-moving parts of the system, right? Like academia, like our education system still hasn't caught up with you know, people on assembly lines, and now we're talking about getting them into AI. Another thing that moves really slowly is legislation. And that scares people, and that scares people in academia, and that really makes people in private sector happy, because that means we can get away with murder, and only in 20 years will they catch us. Read OpenAI stories. So how do you feel about that? How does regulation affect you? Because I don't want to just talk about if it doesn't affect you. That's fair to say. Like in private sector, doesn't affect us. But if it affects you, can you share some horror story? Let's go again from you, because you look ready and Nevena is not.
Horror stories are the only ones I know regarding legislation. First of all, I'm terrified by it, but in a way, I completely understand the necessity, and I would never, I would optimize it. So whatever that means, and it's an important discussion. But the problems that we're facing, and I'm sure Nevena can talk about them more. It's dealing, for example, with privacy, dealing with data that's somewhere out there, for example. And it's not only ours. I think the patient data can never leave your country. So in a way, you cannot upload it to Google Clouds, things like that. I'm not sure, like maybe I'm not well versed in that, but I don't see the difference where it's hosted as long as the cybersecurity controls are in. I feel like when that was established, they imagined people with some parchments, like with all that data, physically carrying it across the city border, and then you could never get it back or something. So whenever you want to be innovative, especially in healthcare and in academia, you get a quick no. So it's either an explicit no, like we cannot do that due to some very old regulatory stories, or even better, like we're not sure what's going on there. The legislature, it's kind of, it's gray, so it's a no again. So it's a very short horror story. It's always a no, and I don't see a way forward, to be honest. And in the industry, correct, like FDA, it's something that's difficult and it takes a long time, but in the end, you know you're going to get it if you have the proper resources and proper training, and like you will be FDA approved in like 5 to 10 years. And nobody is afraid of that. It won't be a stopper for them.
Well, I have my own experience. I'm also in charge in France on public-private partnerships. So we work with hospital and academia. We try sometimes to put projects where we have access to data. And we have a great privacy department internally at Johnson. So it's really great education for me and for them. And once they asked me if I could do a presentation about AI and to educate them about that. It was a great experience and great learning for me. So technically, regulation is important, especially in the healthcare field. And the challenge is there's two different spheres that are involved. So you have one side is the scientist, and the other side is the regulator. Scientists are innocent people trying to help the rest. And on the other side, you have the regulator. They think you have evil on the other side, and they have to protect. And best things to protect is not to give access to data. So the presentation I put in place was what data access, what is the right trade-off between utility and privacy. And basically, there's no one answer. However, you realize that there's a need for education on both sides. So scientists has to be more careful and to considerate what are, because again, I can tell you in my academic experience, I get data from clinician where it was fully identified. But that should not happen in theory. But again, it was not done out of bad will, but like there's a lack of education for the scientists on, I would say, the rule and the implication that could happen. And on the other side, the regulator need also to have a background that is scientific and understand what is the impact of giving that access and what are the different nuances. Because I was looking one of the, I think it was the GDPR protocol, which is like 2014, and maybe it was updated recently, but I'm talking about a story that was 2 years old, where everything is generic. So if you're trying to put it in the context of a specific data set, it could be anything. So, like you could have someone who could play with the system. So ultimately, what you want to do is really to create a bridge between the scientist and the regulator to make sure that these laws are thought, taking into account the different views, to make sure that you bring the utility and at the same time you protect. But that's the way I see it to move forward.
So fear is a word that that is happening again and again when we talk about the data, and I think legislation helps, but should be much more precise, because whenever you are not sure, or particularly if doctor is not sure, the answer is no. And even they are often not educated, they don't have enough support from the law offices in their hospitals or clinics. So even if there are no obstacles really, the answer is no. I'm not sure, I wouldn't risk. So that's, yeah, we should take care of how to ensure progress, save privacy, but really go further with the research, because there are so many data are much more accessible than ever. So, and well, let's regulate. Let's regulate data sharing. Let's regulate data exchange in a way that we can use it. Anonymization, I think that's a great opportunity in that. But yeah, if anybody thinks that, oh, I can be re-identifiable, or my patient can be based on single nucleotide polymorphism, just on one SNP or two SNPs, okay, oh, better no. No, better yes. I think every patient will say, yeah, use my data, make a better prognosis for me, better treatment for the next generation. Nobody would say no. But they need to be, we need to be transparent about for what we are using data. That's the for the scientist side, for what we are using data, and how we will take care of the data. And then that will dilute the fear. We won't completely solve the problem, but we will dilute the fear and the dilemma.
Okay, so to recap, scientists think that government is just friction and they should all disappear. So I have my own 2 cents, because in my previous life I used to run mobile analytics at LinkedIn, and now I get biometric data from people, you know, their eyes and whatnot, and like people will upload on Instagram evidence of them, you know, driving fast cars through tunnels and doing like copious crime and like snorting blow, right? And then be like, oh, but you have, I don't know, my blood type is somewhere in a database. Are you kidding me? And so And then there's Sweden, right? Like a place where everybody's name and address is just publicly available, because it's illegal to go and harass somebody in the doorstep, right? So you have these two opposing school of thoughts. One is like, let's make everything anonymous, but when we make everything anonymous, so we do away with trust, because you can't. And then we have this other solution in which you're like, yeah, take my DNA, fine, but don't do anything sketchy with it, you know? Like, and so how do you feel, where should we land on that scale? Like, how much anonymity do you think is like, because if we decide that this is the path, that nobody should get our data, and I feel this is the consensus here, like there's no path forward. Like, you just can't get my data. You can't research anything. You can't do large scale inferences. You can't get like DNA of 50,000 people and see how it correlates to whatnot. And so where do we want to land as a society? Like, do you think we should land in a place where we just don't get that data and that research is just not done? Or do you think we should migrate towards something else, and then how would that look legislative? You want to point questions?
Okay. So I would be quite on the liberal side as a scientist. Yeah, most of the data, but if you don't do the harm.
On my side, I don't think there's black or white. It's a gray area anyway. And you cannot take one universal rule and apply it for every single project for all the country. And you have to have flexibility, and a regulation should not be written in stone. So, because things keep evolving, I keep people telling me, oh, genomics data is identifying. And I can challenge them that it's not identifying, except, let's say, there's 5 people on the planet, they have like a specific mutation in one SNP, 3 of them are women, 2 are men, and 1 in Europe, 1 in US, and you know that information connected to the record. So you can say, oh yeah, it's published, I have this genome, it has this mutation. But ultimately, you know, do you know like what is the difference between my genome and yours in percentage? Anyone knows in the room? Any guess? 50%, 5%, 95%. I give you 3 solutions.
0.51.
So it's around 5% at most. So which means like all the rest is common. So if you take all the genomes in all these databases, if you don't have other information, it's hard to find that details. So, and again, as I mentioned, it's not about, it could be used by case, but it can be also, if you do it case by case, it's gonna be very long and fastidious. The point is to have like guidelines and a part where things get tricky, we don't have the answer, bring the right people around the table. That should not only be a regulator to find out the solution, but it's a challenge. We cannot go without regulation because it can be messy. So someone, for instance, get all the data available online. I'll take insurance company. They see that you have a mutation and that mutation has a disease that costs a lot. You wake up in the morning and your like insurance bill goes up and you don't know why. And because they find out that you have that mutation and they know that the cure for that type of disease is very expensive. So, but is it for that reason that we have to block the scientists, we have to block the research? So we need to make sure that there's kind of an ecosystem and we consider the different facets. But it's not an easy problem, and that's why you need a lot of people to work together to find the best solution. That's my take.
I have to admit that I don't, I feel we should make our fears more specific as well. So the regulatory part is not specific enough, but I don't really understand my view on that and the society's view either. Because, for example, staying in the genomics realm, so what exactly is our fear with somebody having our DNA? So when I was initially coming into that area, somebody who was really good at presenting stuff said that that's the most private data you can have, because with that somebody can make another you. And that resonated so fully with me. I was like, I can completely understand that. Now I'm like, I don't really see that happening. Somebody would destroy that right away, stop midway. Nobody needs that. So that's not realistic. But like, is there something there regarding your ancestry, relatedness to somebody, maybe the fact that you are somebody's bastard child or something like that? I don't see that happening either. Maybe, I mean, for me, I know that.
I mean, I might comment on that because that's sometimes in a clinical setting is called accidental finding. And there's a regulation about that. So let's say someone goes to the clinic, they do a genetic test for a specific mutation, because they did the whole genome. You find out, because like, for instance, they have a rare disease, you have the tree of the family and you look up and the data is matching. It's not the real father. So what you do? Did you communicate back or not? And there's a regulation and it's country specific.
And it should be specific, and it's a very specific problem that somebody, that's quite common, both of those things. So accidental findings of rare diseases and mutations, and also stuff about relatedness, which is also fine, but I'm not sure that that's somebody's main concern. Like a person who is against that, I'm not sure that they're taking that into account. In some societies where there is a healthcare insurance problem, maybe if they would discover your susceptibilities, that would make your premiums go up or something like that. I mean, but I need to know what exactly are those fears in order to make up my mind. I don't really understand, because personally, the most embarrassing stuff in the digitized form is not in my genome, obviously. It's elsewhere, it's in your browser or somewhere, whatever you're ashamed of. So I would love it if that discussion was kind of more public and available to me from multiple standpoints, because I wouldn't take into account like, what's happening in a clinical setting, you know?
Yeah. So I think maybe the answer is the fear of the unknown.
I'd agree. And also in your example with insurance companies, yeah, we can kick it into data science and be like, let's not give them evidence if they can increase your, but how about just don't increase my like premium because you douchebags found something about my DNA? Like that's where the legislation should go. Like we should not give them data. We should tell them here's the data and don't be bad. Like, I mean, that's how laws were designed to work.
Again, it's really the unknown, because again, assuming you put it on there, so how would you control the data access? How you put a mechanism to validate, for instance, I take the example of the insurance, that they will not do that. Because again, like, there's an entire ecosystem that goes beyond the regulation. It's like, okay, you authorize or you restrict, because in my previous role, I was leading the bioinformatics project for the Qatar Genome Program, and we started everything from the scratch. So there were like 6 pillars, and we were all working together, because again, you have to educate the people to come and donate their genome. We have like a security environment where actually it's not even in the cloud, it's in the secured local infrastructure, and access was very restricted. It was like project driven. We have like data, it's kind of unbreakable. It's not even connected to the internet. But again, like there is a progress on the way they are addressing the project. The more people know about kind of typical use cases, because again, like even in the pharma industry, if you're starting a project, you cannot access the data if you don't tell exactly what you're going to do out of the data, and you're not authorized to do anything beyond that. So if you say, I'm exploring this hypothesis, let's say down the way you said, oh, I have these more things to do, you have to put it back and make sure that is really going with the consent of the patient, that the institute authorizes you to do that. So as I mentioned, it's not binary, and there's a lot of interconnected mechanism that goes with it that make it complicated if we say yes or no and make it very simplistic.
I would just make a point about the data access, which was also not regulated, and I was really shocked that that's worldwide unregulated, as we learned, is which of my doctors can approach my chart, my medical data. So whether my psychiatrist should see the results of my gynecologist, or whether GP should have access to all those medical data. That is also not regulated. And what we are talking about science
and this is a great point that reminds me also a discussion I had, and it's really a big paradox, because today your credit card access. So assume you go, you do a transaction, and you buy something. So it's very regulated. But if you take, in the other hand, how your medical record is accessed, and again, it depends on the country. In some of the hospital, any doctor can access to your healthcare account. Why it's not the same way that it's what's happening with the transaction. So you go to the doctor, they have access for your medical record while they're treating you. You have to approve that the same way you approve transaction, and then once it's done, they don't have access anymore. So you feel there's also a level of maturity that is different, and sometimes you say, okay, why can you take from one industry and put it in the other and apply the same rule? So it's really paradoxical.
But if I may build on that analogy, I was always wondering, so I'm not sure what kind of regulation is in place, or at least security measures around credit card transactions. I assume there are quite many, that it's a very validated system. But in the end, the embarrassing part there, it's not obviously somebody not stealing your money, but like, what are you buying with your credit card? People often do that, so they don't want something on their statement or something like that. I have no idea who has access to my transaction data in the bank. Maybe it's highly confidential stuff. I haven't, not likely, since it's being printed and then sent through email and everything. And then again, like, why are we not worried about that? And then if we're not, maybe it's just the fear of unknown, because it's all unknown to me.
Okay, so this concludes our, what do you call it, mandatory. Okay, how did I come up with this? So I'm supposed to moderate. I've never moderated anything before. I've moderated a couple of fights between my kids, but I've never moderated anything more serious. And so, of course, this morning I fire up ChatGPT, and I'm like, what do people want to hear on these things, right? And the thing comes up with a couple of things, and I'm like, oh, this is just, I mean, it's just shite. Like, it's like really bland and whatnot. But then, in well-organized conferences, the organizers give you a nudge. They're like, hey, in case you didn't have time to come up with questions, here's some questions, you idiot. And so, and those were basically ChatGPT, just better because he did it yesterday and had time to, like, I
think they're specifically ChatGPT.
Yeah. But how appropriate is it that in an AI conference ChatGPT dictates the question? So, but I think that's those were the, like, that's what you expected to see. I'm more interested in, like, now that I got you and I talked to you for an hour and you're kind of interesting people, I want to I want to I want to hear like what excites you personally. Like you came here for a reason to do somebody a favor or like for free beer or something. But like what there's some developments like what excites you? Is it LLMs? Is it like what's your take on this AI thing? And we can also start from Ognjen.
Thank you. I got this question in advance, and first I was frightened by the fact that I have no idea what excites me, but then it came to me quickly. I'm excited that one of the worst aspects in science, in research, is kind of tends to be alleviated with this whole advancement. It is the revolution in LLMs, and it's the toil and grind, or whatever word there is, like all the hard, unnecessary work, which is kind of, it's kind of like a cornerstone of science in a way, and we are proud of that. You know, from our history, we did all that, starting from, you know, Mendel and his research, like he crossed over like 5,000 P's or something like that. And it's what we do. And when we're concerned about our new generations, we always say like they're not doing the toil now. So what's going to happen? Everything. So there's a grind that actually forms you and makes you better. There's the grind that just simply tires you out. And I would feel that the science, the writing of papers, writing of documentation, the whole regulatory stuff, I think that much of that can be made almost trivial with our tools, but then you're still in charge of decision making, as you said, as a support or something. Because the only scientists that I've seen presented like in movies which seem truly happy are those like mad scientists who try to take over the world. They don't have documentation, they don't have regulation, they have nothing. They're just, or maybe those, you know, the commercial with ethnic people looking at color test tubes and they're like smiling or something. That's not real science for you. And the first time you need to write a paper, if you haven't, when you have to do the introduction, which is like a fluff piece of some sort, where you are just talking about well-known facts, I mean, I want that to be gone, and I'm excited about that.
Do you actually read? Because when I read papers, the first thing I skip is that fluff. Like, well, this topic is very interesting for the following reasons. Like, does anybody read that? Can we just agree to just drop it out of the papers? Like, it's annoying. It takes the longest time to write.
And remember that we initiated this revolution. If it starts, let's drop the introductions. Yeah.
It's not a bad idea to step back when we realize it's the wrong thing. What makes me excited is really trying to understand how we could leverage analytics to support understanding of complex rare diseases we are facing today. And I think one of the interesting topics we're working on in my team is trying to find out what is the best way to leverage multimodal data. So assume you have all these source of data and you have this complex disease. Rather than saying, okay, we find this mutation, maybe it's related to the disease, how can you help build the scenario of the mechanism of the disease using the multimodal data, using technology, of course, you can AI. We have some work with Gen AI on the biology side, on the single cell. It's still like exploratory, but it might be promising. And the other thing is really the representation of the data as knowledge graph, for instance. And again, when you take one modality is already complex. Now, if you have all this modality together, it's really complex and fascinating because it could help giving a better understanding of the disease. And the other things is like the interaction between the different data sets with all the approach around network biology. So these are the three pillars we're trying to build and put together that are potentially could be disruptive, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, what Ramzi said, it's really a challenge of the new age, incorporating all these views. And I will add what also makes me very excited is introduction of the real world. So from the perspective of academia, where I worked for more than 20 years, we have a gap between the practice and the rationally developed experiments. So the new approach where we introduce real world data and the real world practices in the research is where AI is necessary and where I expect great progress.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go with Ognjen and say that that sounds to me like you could, if you had enough workforce, go through this data by yourself and draw magical conclusions. But like, so I have a bunch of industrial designers and mechanical engineers in my office, and there's a picture from 1950s, you know, before CAD, how people used to run it, and there were these huge halls of people leaning over papers and drawing things and then erasing them and whatnot. And now it's like one dude with a computer just being like, so to me, I think those are related because sufficiently delegating as a manager opens your mind to seeing a different picture, right? And so you're just saying that that data opens you to see things that you would not be able to see. I have a question for the organizer. Is it kosher to ask questions from the audience? Is that a thing or not a thing? Because although it scares me because I see a lot of smiling faces in the audience, and you should probably talk to your therapist. You're smiling at a data conference. Like, so is there like a protocol? Does anybody have a question? The only person? No. Go ahead. Do you want the mic?
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for this talk. It was, I think, in these 2 days I've been here, it's most like fun one. And I think we need more topics like this because I had experience working, like teaching math and having workshops with kids, like teaching the programming and AI. And I believe that in a way, we have a tendency to overfit to our vision of the future. And in those cases, we forgot how amazing the new generations can be and like the variety that they are bringing to us. And in a sense, I wanted to ask all of you what do you do in those situations when you tend to fall back to your basics and to your teachings, what you have learned, and when you stop to impose that like forcefully to young ones and the younglings, as the Jedi would say. So that's basically my question. Thank you.
You could start.
Thank you. This is a very wholesome question, and so thank you for the compliment from all of us. Yeah. To be fair, it's kind of always a struggle with yourself, because everything that you give to them, in a way, you take something from yourself, even if it's time or effort or something like that. I know it sounds selfish, but it is something that you might not be aware of that, but any additional effort and any initiative is kind of something that you have to invest in. And then there is always that struggle with yourself. If something that you're doing, that you imagine is doing well, if it's failing in any way, is it them or is it you? And I have a feeling that the right way to go is it's always you, because in the end you don't have better them. It's kind of similar to, like when you are talking about policies, vaccines, like general health policies, you can say that people are not good at following your instructions. They're bad in multiple ways, but in the end, those are the only humans that you deal with. Yes, you can improve them. You can think about how to better them. This is exactly what your teaching is. But today, you have to change. And then in 10 years, we can discuss if there is something better. So for me, it's like there is no you. You have to give your whatever you're willing to give, and then assume that you have to change.
Nice.
In my case, again, like I decided to go back to teach at the university for the only reason that I see there's like a big gap between the traditional way of teaching and the people that candidate for the position we're having in the private sector. So I'm trying to be as close to the student as I can, and again, I'm trying to see, based on what they've done, what is the missing element. And again, it's not the knowledge, it's more about the thinking, thinking out of the box. And I had like a seminar to master the students who are supposed to go to the market. And before starting my seminar, I asked them, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And nobody was able to answer that question. And I purposely asked that question not to get the answer, but just to put the question in their head, to make them ready to prepare to put the right question to find out their path. Because this is
to
something...
make an inception of the idea.
Yeah. So, and the other things I'm doing, I at the end of my courses, like for the semester, I created a form with a set of questions to get anonymous feedback from the student to help make the program better.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
So, I will answer this question as an employer. So when I'm employing people, I employ a person. I really don't care much about their skills. Okay, a background must be life science. It couldn't be law. But if they're smart and motivated and courage, that's good enough. That's good enough.
I think that, can moderators answer a question? Or?
You can, yeah.
Yeah, because I think you summed it up, right? Like, my first experience with that was like, I don't know, 20 years ago. That will date me. But like at Google, they had this concept of in university. You go and you study and you teach people. And then at LinkedIn, I was happy enough to be there when they were making LinkedIn University. And in my company, we also, like, I spent at least like 5-6 hours in front of a board, you know. And I don't see any difference between now and you know, I see kind of myself and people that I was with when I was studying, and these people are okay, they have 10, 15 years of experience less, but they're motivated. Like, again, survival bias. Like, you're looking at all the people out there and saying these people will never do anything, but we're not here because we're the average. Like, you remember when you went to your elementary school reunion? Not everybody ended up being a data scientist. And so people that I end up interacting with and teaching, I don't see any difference between them and us. They're not dumb. The tech is different. If they're motivated, if they're willing to learn, I haven't seen any. And also, I want to thank you for your compliment. We're here all week. Like, we'll move it to the bar later if you want. Does anybody else have a?
I'm not going to do anything. So a quick question for all of you, and thank you all for being here and speaking. So you spoke about regulations from both the industry perspective and the academic perspective. How comfortable would any of you be with AI driving the regulation and updating it?
I'll start and I'll be short. I would be comfortable with that. I always need a human in the loop. I learned that yesterday from the keynote talk. I love it. But I am comfortable. I think that's well structured data. I think we've always known that this kind of regulation, it's very well formatted. It's kind of, for me, it's a poster example of what you should use AI on. Never eliminate the humans, but this is also part of what excites me. So all those boring contracts, stuff that you do, verifications, you know, so I would completely be okay with the majority of work being delegated to the AI. Decision making, never. So ultimately there has to be somebody approving that. But for everything else, completely.
I would say the problem is not with AI or human in the regulation side. It's about the clarity of what we want to regulate and how we regulate it. Because in AI, if I validated the algorithm, but again, to validate an algorithm, you want to know what is the principle behind it. And that's where I see things still very gray in the regulation and very large. Because again, like, you could bias the AI to say always yes to your thing, because the rule you're putting on the back are very lean. So that's, I would say, it's not a problem of AI or not AI. It's a problem of, like, there's a lot of gray area, and I think there's not much people involved with the multidisciplinary point of view to formulate the problem. I mean, you could create easily a decision tree with saying, okay, if I have this kind of problem in this country with these kind of things, I do this, I do this, I do this, and here I don't know. And when I don't know, I create a committee with this kind of people to try to address the problem, because it's kind of a tricky problem. As long as you have a decision tree, you could create an AI and you can validate, you could put all the necessary, but what is missing is that tree that now is still, I would say, driven by a regulator that don't know the domain problem very well. They're trying to learn. I see a lot of people are making effort, but you need to have more people around the table to see both sides of the story, because otherwise you'll be tending toward the side where you say no.
So, as Ramzi said, you should have more diversified population in that AI model. But I would agree with Ognjen that as long as we have a human in the loop and the human has a final, who has a final say, AI is, I'm fine with that.
So I think the reason we have a human in the loop is accountability, right? Like, you can't tell AI, I'm going to meet you in the playground after school, right? But like the whole point of a human in the loop is you can sue somebody. So when Google bounces you, right? No, this happened to people. They say like you have suspicious activity and you just like sort off, like, and you have no recourse, no action, right? And so in the US we have this glorious invention called small claims court, right? Where you can just call anybody on this planet for $30 and they have to show up in court. And so when Google does this, you send them an email, small claims court, they have to fly somebody over, it costs them at least 10 grand, right? And so you sort these things out. And I don't care if it's AI, I'll sue AI too all day. So I think the issue is accountability. And if you have a machine that just gives you a decision, you feel powerless, you're like, that's not okay. But if there's a human in the loop, that human has a face and we're gonna punch it, right? And so I think, does that answer, like, what I meant by punch, that's figure of speech for having a civilized discourse that leads with amicable resolution to bilateral happiness.
Please, let's have more questions from someone.
Yes,
This
more.
is so fun. Somebody else, please.
That's it. Thank you very much for your participation. See you in the bar.
Don't go yet. I'm almost feeling sad to end this panel, but I do have some certificates for you guys. So this is for you. This is certificate of appreciation for your engagement. This
Participation
is for
award.
Yes, you get a star.
I love these.
Ognjen, thank you so much, and Nevena, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.